Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. It is the first show of July. Can you believe we're already in July? Yowza, yowza, yowza. It's a good thing. It's a great thing. We're smack dab in the middle of summer. And I find that in the summer times, you're kind of dealing with two themes. You're dealing with wanting to take a break, just having fun, right? It's that summer vibration of, honestly, it is. It's about like pleasure, learning to, just have fun in life, letting go. And then there's also people who have that extra time in the summer and they're really looking to kind of do some work of how do I feel about my life? And it's like cultivating joy and pleasure from kind of spiritual perspective, right? So there's people doing that with like their physical bodies and their spiritual bodies of how they're like, well, let's do a check-in. How do I feel? And it's because it's funny because a lot of people think about the summer speeding up and really it's kind of about slowing down. You have to slow down before you can speed up. You have to have that balance. And it's true because sometimes you're scattered if you don't slow down. If you don't slow down, you might be running, but you don't know where you're running to. You're kind of just like, I kind of want to do that. Yeah, sure, that sounds fun. What are you up to? I'll tag along. And we really have to be aware of what our compass is. We have to be really aware of why we are doing the things that we're doing at the simplest goal of happiness, pleasure, and joy. And I talked about this topic a couple shows ago. It was really about finding joy, pleasure, and happiness. And so this show I wanted to talk about was what happens when things change direction. So you kind of have to acknowledge, when it's good or the basic goal before it gets shooken up and it changes direction. And so that's the thing. Life presents obstacles, and life is a mirror to us and it shows us things that when we want something, when we're going after a certain goal, unforeseen things are going to happen. We might have a delay with our goal. We might, let's say, meet a person and they mess up our goal, right? It's like, well, I wanted that, but geez, I just dealt with that person, or my goodness, is this what it's going to be like? Am I going to have more of this if I stay where I am, or if I want to do more with this goal? So what happens is the universe and life mirrors things back to us and goes, you sure you want it? You sure you want it? Or you're going to have to learn these lessons if you want to stay with this goal or if you want to stay on this path. It's very important because that might be a predominant lesson around having something. It really might be. You might have to deal with a certain common personality to obtain what you want. You might have to deal with a certain traditional disappointments that most people have to get past in order to maybe be one of the successful ones. In every field, there are common people you deal with and common problems. I kind of like to talk about things in generalities sometimes because it's like, that's true. Like everybody can relate. It doesn't have to be like on the nose spiritual. Everything in life is spiritual. I really believe that. I say that the physical presupposes the spirit, like spirit created physical. So everything that we do is spiritual. Even when we're doing really weird things, we came to this life to live, and we came to this life to understand and explore. So even some of the crazy stuff, it's all spiritual. It's just how locked in are you with your soul? How locked in are you with your spirit? Same question. How locked in are you with knowing what you are participating in and co-creating? Because that's what it is. It's like everything has meaning. It really does. And we have to sit with ourselves even through the obstacles and go, what just happened? Because yeah, it could be like a cluster, right? Or it could be you're dealing with other people's free will as well as your own, and it's not just you're not the only horse at the race, and you don't know if you're going to win. Sometimes other people's free will can really, complicate um our goals. It's not because we're selfish. It's not because one person's more domineering over the next. It's just there's more things involved. And so it's our job to really be conscious, to really be self directive, and to really look at the vista of what's going on here, because the stronger our vibration is, the more we are focused, the more that we know what our goal is, the more that we have our vision. um, Life will shake things up for us with environment, people. And what happens is usually energetically, the surrounding energy will default to the highest vibration in the room, in an overall environment. And that's true. And so that's like really an energetic law. It really is. Um, And that's something I think I want to talk about one day. Yep, the energy does default to either the highest vibration in the room or the most chaotic vibration in the room. And the rule of the highest vibration does trump the most chaotic vibration. But my goodness, if someone was chaotic and had a high vibration, whew, now that's a show to talk about. That'd be rather wow, right? But usually people who are of higher vibration and are focused, they're just that. They're not unraveling. They're together, they're direct. And it took time to create that and cultivate that. And chaos usually is a little bit more spirally. It's not such a human vibration. And we are in a physical human realm. And so that's what I want to bring that to you. I think like changing directions, that itself can feel like chaos, right? That itself can feel like, where am I don't quite understand. um and not that chaos is bad, it's just that we really do have to make sense of things, and we have to keep redirecting the needle, even if it's just one obstacle. And the reason why is because life really does tell us what that next thing for us to work on. If we just kind of and I believe me, I'm guilty of it as the next person, but let's say if we had this goal and life is going good, and maybe it's like the next stage in our career or something like that, or an opportunity, and something kind of just goes wah wah wah, right? Could be could be your boss, could be a trusted friendship connected to your success, and you're just like, whoa, um I trusted this person, or wow, that must be a sign maybe I'm not meant to be where I'm meant to be. And no, it's just the mirroring back of the energy of what you need to learn to progress, or you holding strong through that storm or that tornado, you getting calm through that chaos so you can stay exactly where you are and then just pick up, right? You just pick yourself up and you just keep going. And in a way, spiritually, that's quite profound. if you are able to work with, whether in flow or flexibility, what life threw you, rather than, you know, redirect, just solely on chaos or, you know, just circumstance, that's a pretty powerful thing. It showcases that you've reached a certain point within your life where you're like, I'm here. And really to be humble and listening with that life direction, because I want to say that too, um life does show us where we need to be and what we need to do, and we do have to listen. There is that balance of, yeah, we're a go-getter, right? And we're going to take things as we come. We're really just right? There is that balance, and then we do have to listen, because I've heard many people, and there's even certain things within my life too. It's just you didn't exactly expect to be there. Like, for instance, I don't think I expected to work with numerology as much. Yeah, I don't think I did. And I think that's something, I think that's a story that I would love to share too. In the future too, as well. I didn't expect to be in numerology as much. I didn't expect to be in healing as much either. I did want to go more into reading, and that changed, that flip-flop, that changed. There was times where I did like healing more than reading, and then there was times again I liked reading more than healing, and vice versa, and ping pong back and forth. And then there's times I like numerology more. It's just, there are constants, right? But I do a lot with numerology, and I don't think I ever planned that. That was always something to build off with my understandings of how energy worked. I didn't always expect to use it as within my career as much, but that's me listening to my life direction. That's me going like, there's flow here, I enjoy it, there's something. So that's the theme of the day. I took you a little bit on a course. It's all about changing direction. What are you going to do, right? What does life show you? Do you hold strong, um or do you go, okay, life, you just you made me consider something that I haven't been considering. And usually it's a bit of both. So I want to give you that. And I want to actually talk about our guest. So Frances Pullin will be having in a moment. And she's a wonderful intuitive medium channel, and I can't wait to talk to her. So we're going to have her on right after the break, and away we'll go. I want to say hi to Tracy, and I want to say hi to Chris. Hi, guys. Pop down your questions for Francis or me if you have any during the live broadcast. And it's great seeing you all. We'll be back in a few.
The unexplained. It's all around us and usually supplies more questions than answers. You need answers. You need Cross Country Paranormal. Founded by Benjamin Young, CCP seeks to train, educate, and mentor anyone that has a passion for the paranormal. CCP is building a network of teams and investigations across the country, and all experience levels are welcome. Learn more about CCP on their website, ccpinvestigations.com, where you can find frequently asked questions, check out their equipment, follow their latest events, and of course, shop. Visit them now at ccpinvestigations.com. That's ccpinvestigations.com. Cross Country Paranormal. All are welcome. All are family.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I want to bring Frances in and give her a warm welcome and introduce her. Hello, Frances.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm doing great. I want to introduce you to everybody. Welcome. Frances Pullin is an intuitive medium channel and hypnotherapist. She is an author of two books, Loving the Me in Me and It Is I, Amadeus. Welcome, Frances Pullin. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. Yes. I would like to start from the top with you. What really put you on your spiritual journey? What gave you curiosity? What kind of brought you to becoming a channel, a medium, and intuitive?
Throughout my life, I knew I had gifts, but I didn't understand what they were. So I just laughed about them and shrugged them off. And in 2007, I had my oldest son, who was 33 at the time, died suddenly of a heart attack. And it shook me to the core. And I went down in the rabbit hole. And one day a friend said, I'm going to start teaching meditation. I think it would be good for you. And I said, okay, I'm in. And that was my first step forward. It was about 2005 at the time, and we did meditation. We learned automatic writing and meeting our guides and angels. And one of my guides is Amadeus Mozart, and I began to channel him. That was the beginning of my story, and it's such a perfect place for me to have come to. It's everything I've ever believed and more, but I didn't know how to get here until this life circumstance happened.
For sure. When you were developing your gifts and you were channeling this person who's actually a historical figure, because channeling happens with people who, let's say, maybe have lived with this lifetime or maybe who haven't lived through this lifetime. But with Amadeus Mozart, he is, and he's known by many people. What was that experience like for you, where you're like, I'm not sure what's happening, or I'm fascinated, or what were your thoughts and emotions?
At first, I just let it happen. And then, as a few weeks went by and it happened over and over, he was always first in line to channel when we were invited to do so in class. And I realized that he's been with me all my life. And I always was the first one to raise my hand. And I always sat in the front seat. And I was always at the front trying to learn more and more. And I could see that we mirrored each other's personality. So he was always there, kind of nudging me along the way. And as the story progressed, we discovered, he told me, I discovered that in his lifetime as Mozart, I was his older sister, Nannerl.
So
And
there
that
was,
blew me away. Just
yeah,
just brought tears to my eyes and thought, how could that be? How could I be that person? Am I worthy of being that energy that grew up with him as he was developing his skills? Was really eye-opening, and I had to begin to realize that I'm good enough. And
yeah,
that's spirituality.
yeah. So that would make sense too, how you were able to access him just so strongly and purely, because he's a family connection.
Yes,
Yeah,
we knew each
absolutely.
other's energy. Absolutely.
Do you find that you talk to him and he still gives advice just readily after, or do you find that he stepped back sometimes and new guides have come forward and now you have like a whole team?
I definitely have a whole team. But this morning, when I did my meditation, I wrote down a question that's been bothering me a little bit. And he stepped right up and it is I, Amadeus. Good morning, dear one. And he went right into the advice that he had for me that resonated perfectly. I
Awesome.
just needed to have it put in order a little bit because my mind was being scattered with the information, and he just lined it all up for me. So I understood it as clearly as possible. So
And
he's always there.
yeah, absolutely. I always like to ask people what their experiences are with like their guides or the people, the spiritual energies they work with, because sometimes it changes for people and sometimes it's exactly the same. And so it's really interesting to hear someone's mediumship and channeling journey with how they work with those on the other side. I wanted to ask too with a story that I read. Um, from you. You talked about how one of the first experiences that you had seeing somebody channel was at like a party or a gathering with your parents, um,
Yes.
and you were like, "Wow!" And I found that really fascinating because, um, you know, back in the day, I don't think it was as normal to have a channel or like a reader come to a party. So, can you talk about that experience and can you talk about um, just the time frame, and I'm just fascinated. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I was at my parents' home for dinner, and they had just returned from living in the Sacramento area for about 5 or 6 years. I was married with children, so I did not go with them. And they never talked about channels or psychics or anything out of the ordinary ever. And we were sitting at dinner, and this man who was the guest said to my mother, "Esther, shall we channel?" And she said, "Oh, yeah." And I thought, oh my God, I need to leave. I was scared to death because I knew that God wasn't going to like this. Then I looked around, and my little sister was sitting there very calm. Um, and he asked her to take my hand because he knew I was frightened. I had some questions about dreams I'd had in my lifetime. I presented them to this man whose voice came out as a woman, and he explained them away, and I've never dreamt them since. So he was able to look at my past lives and find out which one was bothering me and how he might be able to gift me a healing. And it was very simple, just explained it away. And even though I talk about it as I am right now, I've never had the dream again. And it haunted
Wow.
me.
Wow. So it was pretty profound, the change for you. Did your parents have interest in it as well when they were viewing the channeling on that day?
They had their own things they wanted to talk about, which they did. And my mother, who was um, always sick or thought she was, asked for a diet from this particular spirit. And it was almost 100% verbatim from what the doctor had given her that was hanging on the refrigerator.
Oh wow.
He just knew exactly what she needed. And she trusted him a little bit more than the doctor, I believe, because she knew it was coming from spirit.
Gotcha. Wow. So your parents were open to this world. Did they not really talk about it beyond like that moment, or did sometimes they acknowledge that, this was possible and channeling and spiritual gifts were something in somebody's life?
We never discussed it. I was 24 at the time, probably, and they never discussed it unless this man came to town. Then they'd say, "Frank's coming over and we're going to do a seance. Can you come?" And I couldn't. I never got to see him again. But
Yeah.
they stayed in touch with him, and he came through when my father passed. He came to visit and be at the funeral, and he told my mother, he said, my dad's name was Warren. He said, "Warren won't be back." This was his last life. Interestingly enough, I talked to my dad a lot. We're friends now. We were not always friends. And on Saturday, I did a session for a client, and he said, I want to talk to your dad, because he knew my dad's story. And lo and behold, for an hour, my father channeled through me.
Wow.
And that was the first time we'd done a session with him ever.
Wow.
So it continues to grow, and I continue to let it grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're kind of talking about the theme of kind of changing direction and not knowing sometimes how we'll grow, right? And
Right.
if you ever perceive that you're going to be channeling and working with your father?
Never.
Yeah.
Never. Even when I began channeling, I have Justine, who is a lovely soul, and I have Matilda with an H, who's a fairy, and I channeled Thor and all kinds of different entities that come in for the right reason. And Saturday, it was my dad's turn to be the right reason.
Exactly. Exactly. There's a reason, and you just got to surrender to it, right?
Yes, absolutely. And just trust that you're safe and surrounded with white light.
Absolutely. When you were developing your gift, so I'm gonna jump back to when you wanted to start practicing and learning about being a channel. Um, what were some of the trials and tribulations that you went through to get from there to here?
The very first thing was in meditation class, and the instructor would say, and now you see a lake, and now you see butterflies. And I never saw what she was talking about. And I kept saying that. And she said, yes, I can see what you see. And finally, one day I just gave up, and I said, I'm going to pretend. I'm going to imagine it. And lo and behold, that was the key, because that's what you do is you picture, what a lake looks like. You just picture one in your mind. And pretty
Yeah,
soon it all falls into place, and you do see the butterflies and the fairies and whatever comes into your view. It's all particular to you.
absolutely. And I think that's a good thing to mention because some people naturally are very like auditory or they're feelers. And sometimes they're like, I'm not seeing anything. And it's right on the money. It really is kind of like your imagination at first with just how you visualize. And then you go, what? This is real? Like,
Right. It's
yeah.
crazy. And it is that way as a reader, as you know. I'm not that visual. Yesterday, I was giving a session, and I knew there was a sports car. I don't know what it looked like. I just said, there's this new car in your energy and travels pretty fast. And he said, oh, I'm not planning on anything. And I said, well, it's there. They're telling me that there's something coming up for you, and it has to do with a new car. So we will wait to see by the end of the summer if the new car showed up. And as you know, it may not even be for him. He could
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
he could be purchasing it for his mom and dad. Maybe it's not that fast, but it's fast for them.
As Right, as long as you just deliver the message, there's a way that it connects. There's a way that it
Absolutely.
connects, you
And
know?
not to doubt the message, because why would I say that to him?
Yeah.
I've never met him in person. Why would I know if he had a new car or an old car? I have no idea.
Just trusting the process definitely when you've reached a certain level within your professional skills where you're like, okay, I'm here, they're here, I got this. Absolutely. I think that's important too to talk about with sometimes you don't always see it and you really have to trust and know, and everyone has a different way of how they get information. And I know a lot of mediums who aren't that visual. Like they rely on that knowing or that hearing. And it actually makes perfect sense because if you're talking to someone, or let's say you're listening to someone and you're the messenger and you're really the vehicle, your voice is the vehicle for their voice, all you have to do is just verbatim go, okay, just keep talking, I'll say what you say.
Yep,
Right?
yep, 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 yep. And the funny thing is, too, I don't often get smells, but that Saturday after my appointment, we went over to another son's house to visit the Grands. And on the way home, there was cigarette smoke in my car. And
Yeah.
even my husband smelled it. And he said,
Yeah.
"How is that happening? The windows are rolled up."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, my dad's here." Because my
Yeah.
dad was a heavy smoker and he was saying goodbye.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, the
Yeah.
acknowledgement. That's beautiful. Isn't that so fun though? Yeah, sometimes scent or even taste, it can be a more random occurrence, but it makes it sure special.
Yes, definitely. We don't smoke at our house. Nobody does that we know. And so for that to be in my car was like, ugh, until I remembered who it was.
Hey dad, what's up? Um can you talk about too, like sometimes you hold retreats or you teach actually in Arizona. That's actually a really important place for you.
Yes, I do. I've been teaching in Arizona. I taught there for 3 years. And then, of course, we didn't go places. So we'll see if that starts up again. I teach meditation and automatic writing at the Sanctuary Wellness Center here in Tustin. And I do that on a weekly basis. It's just drop in, whoever wants to come and play. We play with spirit. We do serious work too, but we always make sure we have fun. And then I held my first retreat in Sedona the beginning of June, which was absolutely fabulous. Not only was the area fabulous, but the people who chose to be there were such a beautiful mix of different personalities that meshed totally together. And they left as friends. And I really enjoyed that piece. So that is the beginning of my retreat schedule. There's going to be more to come.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exciting. And Sedona is such a beautiful place. And wow, like the most you can ever hope for, I think, is if people leave as friends because they've really transcended some type of, learning or, shared that deep of an experience. That's wonderful to
They
hear.
had to live together for almost 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Were they sharing rooms? Or did they all have their own room when they like went away from the teachings of the day?
They all had their own room. They had their own room. This was a 10-bedroom house, and it
Wow.
would have held more people, but Spirit just wanted 10 people there.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
that's a feat within itself, looking after 10 people and sharing and right? It always
And
makes me
getting
think
food
of,
in their bellies.
yes, getting food in their bellies and just I think about just a large house of siblings, like people yelling at each other, like, can you get out of the bathroom? I need the shower.
I grew up in a large family with one shower in the house, so I know that well. And the house was chaos. And this retreat was not chaos at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, but 10 people it's still a little family, so it reminds me of that. But that's awesome that you're gonna do more retreats and that's coming up and that you're doing more in Arizona because I know that's such a sacred place for you. Arizona is beautiful. It
Yes.
is. What a cool place too on top of it. Um, you also, so I'm going to jump around a little bit again. You're an author of 2 books, and that's an amazing feat within itself. That's beautiful that, you have put your story down twice and shared it out to people where they don't feel as alone or as confused, or they can learn to accept themselves. What inspired you to write the first book?
My mother in spirit said there were 9 books.
Wow.
And
Okay.
one was a workbook, and I couldn't figure out what that meant. I wrote the first one. I wrote both of them with my guides and angels, of course, but the first one was taken directly from my personal journals. And I would talk a little bit, and then I'd take quotes out of my journals about how I grew to know these spirits and messages they brought to me. The second one was the story of growing up in chaos. in a house filled with screaming, yelling, belts flying. You know the story. Everybody has a story. But what I did is I took the time to go back and revisit some of those scenes and to forgive my parents, my siblings, and myself, because I played a big part in all of this. I too was part of the chaos. Learning to forgive yourself and love yourself is incredibly powerful. And that is what I base my retreats on, is loving the me and me. And guess what? I wrote a workbook.
There you go. That's number 3, right?
Yeah, it's the funniest thing. And every time I do a retreat or a class that's based on loving the me and me, I write some more in that workbook. So I'm not sure it will ever be finished,
Gotcha.
but it's a work in progress, and it's filled with lots of love from them and from my heart.
Lots of goodies, ever changing. If I may ask too, when you wrote the first book, It Is I, Amadeus, how did you find that your channeling and mediumship had changed? I feel like, that's just this tremendous gift of love to the universe, and you fully stepped out there with a book. And so how did your life evolve after the first book?
It became more true. I began to actually live in a more spiritual space. Things that I might have done before that or said something, I have learned to be kinder, gentler with my words, with my deeds, with my thoughts, even about myself. I can't call myself stupid or any of those negative monikers. And I wrote the word trust in my journal 1 million times, I'm sure. And as I wrote the book, every time they said trust, I would write it. So if they said it 10 times in a row, it went down 10 times in a row. And that is the biggest reinforcement for me, is that when that car came into my head yesterday or the day before, I knew it was to trust. Don't question, trust.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, we receive things where we kind of scratch our head, right? And if we don't trust, then we really will mess up that message.
Right. I mean, what if you see a banana, or you know there's a banana and you think, oh, I can't tell them there's a banana, but you do. And they say, I'm supposed to have one every day for my potassium. Oh, okay. So it does mean something to them, even if we think it doesn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, there's so many different, signs and symbols are so funny. I feel like that's okay. I'll ask you. I feel like it's a conversation in itself. What are some of your most common symbols that you see? Some people get common symbols, other people don't. So if you do have kind of ones that come up more than others, what are some of those?
I see aprons on grandmas.
Okay, cool.
I don't wear an apron. I don't know if my mother did, but whenever it's a grandmother energy, they always have an apron on. Then I know for sure that it's not an auntie or a mommy, it's the grandma.
That's
also,
cool.
I get a lot of bicycles, and it seems everyone has a story about when they learned to ride their bicycle. And I'll bring up a bicycle story and they'll go, how would you know that? Because even though it's a different bicycle, it's still a different story.
Yeah.
But they come up a lot.
Yeah, those are great reference points. I like the fact that you have one for the apron for the grandma. So you're locked into, okay, I know who I have here. And yeah, the that's really cool. I think people kind of are familiar with certain types of energy when they read. So did you have a profound bicycle story?
I was the only kid in the house who never had a new bicycle.
Wow. Okay.
And there were 7 of us. That always stood out in my mind. It may be why it comes up. because I'm so excited when I find that one of my clients had a new bicycle, and they were learning to ride it with their mom or their dad or whomever. That was my story, and it was part of the story that said I wasn't loved.
Yeah.
The premise of loving the me and me is to show me that I was loved.
Yeah.
And where I fit into the family, I had my sister's bicycles. I didn't really need one. In the middle of writing this story, the book, Loving the Me and Me, right in the center of the book somewhere, it says, I realized they loved me all the time. It was just not what I thought love should be.
Absolutely.
We all have our own, you have a spouse. You say, when you come in the house at night from work, could you just give me a peck on the cheek? Show me you love me, you missed me. You get to say that. But with your parents, you don't think to say, this is how you're supposed to love me. Do it my way.
Yeah.
They'd probably go sit down. And knowing that they had loved me all the time. And I am a hypnotherapist too. And I went to my teacher and I had a session, and we were working on loving me. And she had me go to the room where my father and mother were meeting me. And my mother handed me to my father, and they pulled back the blanket and they were so in joy. And then she said, Frances, take the little baby and hold her and love her the way you want her loved. And it just trickled down my eye, on my face. I just, silent tears just fell. And it felt so perfect. And that was kind of eye-awakening for me to know that from the moment I was born, I was loved. I just didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah. I can understand from the point of view that we surround ourselves, just like you said, when you take on a spouse, you say to them, and that's how you maintain the relationship. This is the way I'd like to be loved, or this is the way I need to be loved. And you can't do that with family because they were already there. You know what I mean? With their own set of rules and thoughts. And there's no really conditions sometimes for some relationships within the family. And it's really a lot to navigate. And even when you tell them, they'll be like, tough luck. This is just who I am.
That's right. They will.
And you gotta then navigate that again. And right, it's like we have to go with, if we're not, we see the world and we go, I would like that. And really, we have to go within to get that, because no one's going to give it to us. And that's perplexing if we are surrounded by those who are supposed to love us so deeply. You know what I mean? So I wanted to ask you too. So with the second book, Loving the Me and Me, how did your life change? Because you were really, the first book you said thrusted you into, you started to treat yourself different. Your wording was different. You learned like you couldn't operate the same way. And that sounded like in the energy of just continuing to ripple out that, loving the me in me and knowing that truth and that wisdom. So where did the second book lead you?
It brought me to a place of peace that I didn't know. And part of the journey, I've been told by the guides, is that I had many lifetimes I did not feel loved. So I had been seeking this love energy, and it's powerful. If you feel it, you know it. And it does bring you to tears. Some of my students, when they meet a guide or angel, they are brought to tears. They feel this powerful, unconditional love. There's no structure, there's no rules. And part of what growing up in a family and feeling unloved is because you're always doing something wrong. You don't know the rules until they tell you you're wrong and they reprimand you, and then you learn the rules, and that's tough. When you learn to love yourself, it's very gentle, it's very peaceful, it's very powerful. And it makes me love others better. I work I work at it. I work at finding something nice to say to the person in front of me in the grocery store. Great lipstick, cute shoes, your little baby is so darling, something that makes them feel good for the rest of the day.
Yeah. It's
It's
so
so
important.
small.
Those things really change people, just a compliment. It could change maybe just their day, or it could change their year. Maybe they needed to hear that. It could completely give them enough energy that small compliment, that seemingly small compliment, can give them just enough of what they need to transform something. I
Exactly.
believe I believe that is so powerful. Yeah. Um, do you feel like you are headed in the direction? I know you talked about the workbook and how that's ever changing, but do you feel like you're headed in another direction for inspiration for a third book? Because I have to ask, because your mom came in and said 9, so I'm curious.
Well, the one that's in my conscious mind may or may not ever take place, but I would like to have a book talking about different mental illness issues, with each chapter written by someone else and then tied together with my guides and angels, making it all work. I went through some depression last year. It was a tough year for everybody. I'm not saying that I'm singling me out. I just had never done that. And I can write about that now. And
Yeah.
I do write about it. I talk about it in showcases like this. But I'm not one who did, let's say, take a handful of pills. But somebody did, and somebody lived through it, and somebody has a story. I was not one who cut myself. Somebody did, somebody has a story, and I'm soliciting people to drop me a note and say, I have a chapter and I
Wow.
want to get it out there.
Yeah, that's going to be a very vulnerable book, but I don't think there's enough books like that out there.
And I can't write the whole thing, and I'm not going to pretend I can.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I can pull chapters together. I can help them edit. I can do a lot of things, but I haven't experienced a lot of things that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different ways that depression really does manifest. It can be subtle, it can be intense. Exactly. And there's people we know of, you and I know of, that don't seem like they have depression and they're still walking around with it on the routine.
Right. It's part of the stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like maybe it's with them, or they haven't figured out how to fully heal. And I mean, it's something that runs so deep with a lot of people. I think depression and anxiety, I think those are energies that a lot of people are dealing with on a day by day basis. And those are the depression, anxiety as well. They're easy to shove down when you find yourself in a place of better balance, right? But have they really gone away from your life?
Or healed.
Yeah, yeah.
And suicide is a big issue in our world right now. People taking their own lives. I wouldn't know how to explain that. I wouldn't know how to say I was on the brink of this, but I didn't do it.
Right. I think that's important to talk about too, like spirituality and mental illness, because I think people, when they go through mental illness, or let's say someone has really reached a tough spot, right? Within their life, they start questioning everything, and it takes them down the path of spirituality. And so there's a lot of people within this work who are learning, growing, and we just have to make sure that everyone has the proper help and learns more about the warning signs, and to be have more vulnerability in the community, because I think a lot of people are here searching, trying to find about life, because sometimes they are in, those stages of they're not doing well. They're really not. They're still getting through it, and they're in like the thick of things, right? They're not on the other side yet.
Right. And as much as we love technology and we love our phones, people text and they text and you misunderstand what they're saying because you don't get the emotion. And
Right.
I'll text with somebody, I'll text maybe 3 times, and then I pick up the phone and I say, okay, we have more to say. We have to talk this out. Because if they're thrilled to death, I might not be expressing enough joy for them. But if they hear my voice, they're going to know it. And that's a lot of what makes the young people and the older people so lonely sometimes. And the book is not going to be called mental illness anything. It might have something creative, but it'll be about mental issues, and it'll be about things that we get caught in our head like a record and we can't seem to get them out. Even though we know that they shouldn't be there, that we should feel differently, we can't get rid of them.
That's a really important point, because just at the foundation with energy, like when we're healing from things, right? It's stuck energy. And when things are so stuck, whether it's from the past or trauma, that energy sticks and gets stuck even further, and it can develop things that really alter our life. And that's when we talk about mental illness. So it sounds like this is a really needed topic. It's very needed. And to circle back to depression, I find when things have ever come up in my life, some of those feelings, sometimes they're warning signs, to look at the things that are before us that our soul's not happy with. Our soul wants to change. It's a hey, you don't feel good, let's look at that.
And sometimes we've brought them from a past life.
Yes. Yeah, it's not as obvious. It's not as simple as hey, let's look at that. That simple principle can be applied to a lot of it. Don't get me wrong, but correct. It's really not. The situation is not that simple. Absolutely.
Right. And when they said to me that I had felt this way in many lifetimes, they also made sure I understood that I was to come into this lifetime to heal that. And when I was starting the book, that's when it got started, was healing me so that I don't come back and have to see these same things again. I get to do other things.
Absolutely. How have you been nudged, I guess, not just within the idea from the book, but do you find that you've been working with clients and depression has come up a lot?
More anxiety, I must say. You were right on with that. It's more anxiety right now. Young people thinking they're having a heart attack when they're just, they need to breathe into a paper bag and slow their mind down and slow their breath down and understand that the pressures being put on us by society, we're accepting them and learning how not to accept them. I don't have to think that I'm the skinniest girl in town or the prettiest or the best football player in the gym. Accept yourself, love yourself for who you are.
Absolutely. And I think the norm of who we are, not only as human beings, but individuals, the norm, I'm just talking about the norm, because I do think overall what a typical human was 50 years ago is different now. different sensitivities. The children are far more sensitive on average.
Yes, absolutely.
So, for instance, what worked for granddad or worked for mom and dad, um, with okay, you do this, you have a good life. It is not the same now for kids. You do this and you have a good life. They really have to not only look at taking care of their physical health, but they have to look at their mental health and their emotional health. And even going forward, as we become more and more sensitive, I think spiritual health is just going to be a norm.
Absolutely, because many are being born remembering past lives. I have a person in my life, I won't disclose him, but he was applying to his little kindergarten, and the instructor said, "Do you have brothers or sisters?" And he said, "Well, I had a sister, but she died in the fire." And she said, "Oh, what fire?" And he said, "The one I died in. We
Oh,
died
wow.
together." So he was living, he was 5 years old, 4 years old. He was still living in that past life. He still saw it. He still knew it. And,
Wow.
and
Wow.
they're remembering more than we know. And it reminds me of the old stories that there's not a ghost under your bed. Well, yeah, there probably was, or at
Right. Yeah.
least in the closet.
Right. It may have worked a tad bit differently than a spooky story, but yeah, very possible. Very, very possible. You're right.
But interesting enough, I got my little shiver bumps that I get whenever they love what I say. So Spirit really liked that we brought some lightness into this, and we could laugh and smile about it and acknowledge what might
Yeah.
be hiding in that bedroom that we
y-
can't see.
Yeah. Like, the tale time, there's like a boogeyman or,
Yeah,
there's something in my room. It's because you're sensing spirit. You're sensing, actually a lot of loving beings and family members there for you. They're in your house usually because they're there for you and your family to help. And it's actually kind of a beautiful thing.
right.
um I want to talk about too, so just for a second, because it kind of reminded me of something, but I do think that, and maybe just like, a passing comment that we can share, I want your view take on it. But with everyone's kind of composition and their field being more sensitive from previous generations, right? I do find that, let's say, if grandma or grandpa noticed that they kind of had to change something, or let's say something was affecting their health, it was almost like they could get away with it for like 10, 20 years and it wouldn't affect them in a way. It was almost like their field and their body had a different composition where, it'd be floating around in them, but it wouldn't be destroying them. And the younger generations, if there is a problem, it's so loud and strong within them. That's why you're seeing, I believe, these intense cases where they just can't deal, they just can't get past it. The way that their field works is very, very differently.
Yes, and the parents and the grandparents love them, are doing the best they can, but they don't even begin to understand what the child is going through as hard as they try. Um, that sensitivity is just huge.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
energy
And
around each of us in our field, in our aura, whatever we carry with us, it's just not quiet.
it's not an imagination, it's not quiet. Our experiences are very much real. Our thoughts, my thought is influenced because we're in a conversation. My thought is sharing space with your thoughts. Like, I'm inspired to ask things from you because of your energy and vice versa. We're sharing space just through our thoughts. It's not just a physical thing, and that goes into any energy, right, that we are sharing and all the energy around us. Like, we share energy at supermarkets with other people. That's why, we walk into an environment and we feel like this is weird or this is great, or you know what I mean? Like, energy is so important. And oh my god, there was a thought in my head and I think it flew out. Oh, yes. This is, I like to talk about this sometimes because it's important to acknowledge the previous generations. And it's just like they didn't have the same tools to navigate it. So if you're asking sometimes advice from someone who isn't energy sensitive or they haven't had similar experiences as you, they can't validate you sometimes. Like just to reference, I knew someone who growing up, they dealt with a lot of abuse, unfortunately, a lot of abuse from family, and they had a very hard life. And, it definitely made learning about their own identity very difficult, right? And then they went on to have children, and they created a life that was very positive and very uplifting, and they had a good home environment, right? And the children had good role models. So the children never had to face the same abuse. But the children, the child, one in particular, was dealing with a lot of emotional pain, and the parent just didn't understood. They're like, what possibly could they be going through? Like, I went through the ringer growing up, like,
Right.
and they think they have it bad. And that's a conversation. Like, no, 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 no. Like, there's still generational trauma, and they're still working through what it means to suffer. And it's just through a different lens. It's not any different. And it's just because one's physical versus some, emotional. I think years ago, it'd be very conventional to think like, if physically something happened, we can talk about it. If it's in your head, grow up. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And now, no, people are like, no, no, no. It's right. So just, I don't know. I'm off. I'm just ping ponging around with the importance of it.
The person who had grown up with the abuse, even though they seem healed, doesn't mean they're not bringing it with them. And maybe a certain phrase they use toward their child is left over. They don't know it. They're just doing the best they can. And it's been interesting to learn that when we work on healing some of those innermost places, is that we can heal backwards generationally and help to heal our grandparents and our parents while we heal ourselves.
Yeah.
That just amazed me when I learned that.
It's really true. It's mind blowing. I feel like that's a great topic too. Like healing, you can heal in both directions. It's really kind of profound. It really is. A question or a comment from Chris. I grew up hearing that I shouldn't be upset because life is going to be way harder when I get older and have kids. Led into shoving down a lot for years. And yeah. Just to speak on your take on that too as well.
Right, Chris. They tell you that and you shove it down, but it's not healed. It's something that you just kind of take out and you write it down on a piece of paper and you draw flowers on the paper or just get some positive emotion going on. It's important to try not to transfer that to your children. And that's where it gets difficult.
For sure. Because you got to break cycles, and then you have to be the one to be in charge of holding that standard. No one's going to teach you that.
Right. And it's not going to take 10 years in therapy. It could take just a few sessions with the right person to move you past it and get you on your way. But when you're taught to shove things down, they don't get healed. So you don't learn how to cope with it with your going forward.
Absolutely. And he's talking about not healed at all till recently, manifested elsewhere until I really worked on it. So just talking about his journey with understanding that and learning about how to do just that, right? In process.
Right. And tell yourself how brave you were to do that. That takes a lot of guts to say, okay, this is something. This is making me not feel good, not perfect, not my parents' favorite child type thing. You move forward and you grow and you forgive them because they were probably taught the same thing they were teaching you.
Lots of forgiveness involved, lots of forgiveness and lots of standing up within our own energy. I absolutely agree. I want to jump over to Jessie Cat, and she asks you, what if you keep having dreams of a friend? Is it because they need help in awaken? Oh, Chris is awesome. Really good. I'll go back to Chris is saying a kind comment. He's making me smile. He's talking about how a reading can help, and a reading is almost like a therapy session as well. And just like Francis, you said, sometimes there's certain people that can help jumpstart the healing. You just got to find the right person, the right session. So thank you, Chris. Awesome. Jessie Cat is asking about dreams, and she's keeping having a dream of a friend. And is it because they need help in real life, in waken life? She's asking.
There's two things that come to mind. One is they need help in real life, just having a friend. And if you're that friend, just be available to talk and listen and laugh. Don't pry, but just let them know you're there. The other piece of that is that sometimes we are having dreams of past life issues. So perhaps this person was in your previous past life and you're working through some things that you didn't finish when you were in that lifetime together. Does that make sense?
Yep. It can go really deep. Yeah. Sometimes I'll be thinking about somebody in a dream that I haven't thought about in years. I'll wake up and I know it's either a lesson for the person I'm dreaming about or a lesson for me. And so it's always a chance for me to reach out and to make a connection and to talk about it. A lot of times, if I'll reach out and talk to someone, hey, I had a dream about you. It'll be either a silly connection, or it'll be a really deep connection. Like, how did you know, like, how did you know I needed someone to talk to? Well, it's through the dream, but it can be very, like Francis is saying, it could be very deep, connected to a past life, your connection there rather than the connection of in this one. She said her mom passed away 2 years ago. So she's having dreams and connection to her friend and her family with her mother that has passed away 2 years ago.
So the friend has the mother who passed away, or both of them?
I think she's talking about she keeps having dreams of a friend, and her mom passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And she's wondering if it's because they need help in waken life. I'm putting together pieces as well. She's typing more information.
Okay. It's coming to me that the mother is coming to get messages to her daughter about how she feels and how much she loves her daughter. And, when people pass, we always think they're going to just go bump into all their relatives and have a big party. And that does happen, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's other things that we have to heal first before we move forward. And I'm getting the impression that the mother has healed all the things that she had with her daughter, and she wants to express that. And she's using you as that vehicle, knowing that you were going to have this opportunity because they know everything. She knew you were going to have this opportunity to ask the questions, so she came to you.
Absolutely. Jessie Cat says, that's how I felt. It was her mom giving me the messages. So that's good
Yes.
validation for her. Hello, Danija. Welcome. And so I think that's beautifully put. Yep. Mothers, if they can find a way to talk to their daughters, right? Like
Right.
the nothing's gonna stop them. Hello, Jessica. Welcome. Chris also was talking about how a part of the healing. Oh, excuse me. Here we go. I'm finding it again. Chris was talking about how sometimes you have to slow down and take a minute to stop thinking about all the stuff. What's been your process when within your own healing journey of how you slowed down, um, and how you reset course? What was the slowdown period like?
I had learned meditation and I learned to use meditation. And I'm not talking about 3 hour long meditations. I'm talking about sometimes it's just 5 minutes, but you say, whoa, I need to do something here. And you sit yourself down. And if something's bothering you, write it down on your paper and just close your eyes and picture the meadows and the trees and the forest, lovely things. Turn on some soft music. Just take a break. We all deserve a break. And part of learning to love yourself is learning when to take a break. And as you learn to do that, it comes easier and it comes faster and it heals sooner, so that you don't have to have those 3 hour meditations where you're up half the night trying to figure out your life. Don't get involved in that. Make them easy. Make them easy for you, for your personality. And some people need that 3 hours, and some people don't have the patience to sit still for 5 minutes. But if you start to picture things in your mind, it takes your mind away from grocery shopping, putting the laundry in, all those things that we call monkey chatter. It just, you're thinking of the stream and how it's floating down through the mountain and relaxing things. Maybe it's a swing on an oak tree branch and you're swinging back and forth. It's as simple as that. Just slow yourself down. And then you can write with your guides or angels when you're finished, if you wish, and get your answers without all the stress.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we really do have the power to change the channel. Sometimes people use meditation just to like blank their mind, which is great. Sometimes they use it to create many different types, but I like the whole guidance of changing the channel. You can put yourself wherever, right? And
Absolutely.
sometimes it's not about doing all that hard work. Sometimes it's just about knowing that you have the power to actually change how you're thinking and feeling, and that's pretty big.
And taking care of you.
Yeah,
Nobody will take care of you like you can take care of yourself.
exactly. That's profound. Truly, with that we need to give ourselves maintenance. So, Francis, I want to know how people can come find you if they want to have a session with you. Do one of your retreats, or if you have anything online going on.
I don't think there's anything online. I'm meeting in person right now at the sanctuary teaching classes. But just to let you know, the best way to get a hold of me is to reach me at Francis Pullin, and that's Francis with an E and Pullin with an I at gmail.com. It's so simple. Let me know how you heard of me, and we'll put something together. I do have a website, francispullin.com. And I have a Facebook page and Instagram and LinkedIn and all kinds of silly things. And I am also the president of the Tustin Holistic Chamber of Commerce. So if you're plodding through Facebook and you look that up, you'll find me there. And we're a great group that meets once a month in Tustin itself. for an hour and a half meeting. Our guest speaker this month is Lupe Silva, and she talks about eating for your health.
Beautiful. Yeah, they're the people who come to the radio show, they're from all around the world and the United States, and some of them are in the California area. So it's good to give people a diverse amount of opportunities where they can work with you more. So if you're inclined, please reach out to Frances. She's awesome. And Frances, I always ask the guests before we leave, is there one piece of advice or a thought or a feeling that you'd like to share with everybody before we'd go? Just off the cuff,
If you learn to love yourself, teach it to others, because love of self is going to change our world and make it a better place.
Absolutely.
And teach it to the children.
Teach it to the children. Keep it going, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Frances. That was again, a lot of profound words. Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Frances. So with that said, I'm going to give you a smile, everybody. Go with luck, love, light, and don't forget to live. Take care. See you next week. Thank you so much, Frances.
Bye-bye.